More than a decade ago, somewhere around 2011 into 2012, a strange sickness rolled through a tiny town in western New York called Leroy. Only about 7,000 people live there. You might recognize the name because Leroy is where Jell-O was born, and honestly, who among us does not love Jell-O? The town sits roughly between Buffalo and Rochester, way up in the part of the state that most of the country forgets exists. Because when people say New York, they usually mean the city, not the endless stretch of farmland and small towns that make up the rest of it. Anyway, in this little place, a cluster of teenage girls suddenly came down with something nobody could explain. They were seizing, they were fainting, they were twitching uncontrollably. Some people say Leroy, some say Leroy, and apparently both are fine because even the local reporters could not agree on it. I am going to say Leroy because it sounds a little fancier and I feel like the town has earned that after everything. Some of you already know this story, but let me catch up anyone who does not. It began with a single girl named Katie who woke up one day with convulsions and tics. This was back in the late summer of 2011. Not long after, her friends started showing the exact same symptoms. Several of them were on the cheerleading squad together. Then it kept spreading, reaching more and more students at the local junior-senior high school. Almost all of them were girls with a single boy in the mix. Naturally, the school panicked and started testing the building itself, checking for mold, gas, chemicals, anything in the air or the walls. They found nothing. Doctors examined the girls and could not locate a single physical cause either. And in a town of 7,000, you can imagine that everyone suddenly had a theory. Was it the HPV vaccine? Was someone tampering with the cafeteria food? Was it the cell towers, the chemtrails, the fake weed the kids were supposedly smoking? Eventually, a nearby clinic, the Dent Neurologic Institute, offered a diagnosis that a lot of people did not want to hear. They said the girls were experiencing what is called a conversion disorder. That is a condition where the root of the problem is psychological, but the body translates that buried stress into genuine physical symptoms. And I want to be really clear here because it matters. The symptoms are real. The girls were not pretending. Whatever was happening in their minds was producing actual convulsions in their bodies. What made Leroy so unusual is that this was not happening to one girl in isolation. It was happening to a whole group at once, which layers a second thing on top of the conversion disorder, an old phenomenon we used to call mass hysteria and now more politely label mass psychogenic illness. The two together are what tore through that school. When the diagnosis came out in early 2012, roughly half the families accepted it. The other half absolutely refused. They could not stand the idea that their daughters were somehow being blamed, even though nobody was accusing anyone of faking. So those families went to the press, and within days the whole thing exploded into national news. Everyone wanted to know what was wrong with the girls in Leroy. And here is the part that still fascinates me. Going public did not calm things down. It made the outbreak grow. Something like 20 more people started showing symptoms, including a woman in her 30s who had nothing to do with the high school at all. The idea itself seemed to be contagious, spreading through conversation and attention the way a rumor does. Meanwhile, the town started spiraling. A lot of parents were convinced someone was covering something up. And that fear was not completely irrational, because it turned out that back in 1970, a train had derailed just outside town and dumped cyanide and an industrial solvent called TCE into the ground. Crews managed to sweep up the cyanide since it had crystallized, but the TCE leaked into the water table. So people started wondering whether these mystery symptoms were poison after all. Even Erin Brockovich, the real one, sent a team to investigate, cameras trailing behind them, promising to dig up the truth. Her people suspected industrial contamination, and to be fair, they suspected it because that kind of thing genuinely does happen more often than anyone would like. But after all of it, they found nothing connecting the water to the girls. The town paid a real price during all this, though. Nobody wanted to visit anymore. Home sales collapsed. Away teams refused to play basketball games in Leroy. People stopped driving in for dinner or a night out, because why risk it if there might be something in the very ground? And that is the quiet lesson buried in this whole saga. Mass hysteria does not stay contained to the people twitching in the nurse's office. It ripples outward into property values and small businesses and the guy who runs the diner and still owes the bank. Fear becomes everybody's problem, whether they want it or not. Then another doctor entered the picture, a pediatric neurologist from New Jersey named Rosario Trifalti. He proposed a completely different cause. He believed the girls were dealing with something called pandas, a rare condition that can flare up after a strep infection, where the immune system essentially turns on the brain and triggers movement problems. He tested the girls, found signs of past infections, put them on antibiotics, and several of them improved. Case closed, right? Except pandas is genuinely rare enough that individual cases make the news, so the idea that it struck an entire cluster of girls at the same school strains belief. Sometimes clusters really do mean something, and sometimes they are just randomness looking suspicious. Flick 100 coins onto a table from 100 angles and you will still see them bunch up in spots. That is random too. It just does not look random to us. And here is the detail that keeps pointing away from a purely physical cause. It was the cheerleaders, not the football players. As one writer put it in a big opinion piece, the illness went after the girls and left the linebackers alone. That pattern shows up again and again across the history of these outbreaks. It is overwhelmingly young women with the occasional lone boy. For a long time, people wrongly assumed hysteria was some kind of white women's affliction, but that was just a society that never bothered to look past itself. In reality, this phenomenon crosses every border and culture there is. You find it in Nepal, in Malaysia, in Ethiopia. There is no magical place free of it, no lost paradise we could return to. It is simply part of being human, and being human comes bundled with all of us, girls included. What I find genuinely interesting is that both treatment groups eventually recovered. The girls who got therapy at Dent got better. The girls Trifalti put on antibiotics got better too. And of course, the antibiotic families took that as proof their daughters had been truly sick while the others were merely stressed. But the most likely explanation for a lot of it is the placebo effect, which works surprisingly well on conversion disorders precisely because the illness lives in the mind to begin with. A person who desperately wants to heal, handed a pill and a promise, can sometimes heal themselves. So the two camps ended up feuding over which one was legitimately ill, when the honest answer 11 years later is that everybody recovered, and the real drama was the group dynamics. There is one more thread worth pulling. When people finally looked closer at these girls, the picture beneath the surface got sadder. Several came from single-parent homes. Some had parents going through serious medical treatments. There was real, unspoken stress sitting in their lives, and that stress found a way out through their bodies. Others, carrying their own unprocessed strain, absorbed the symptoms simply by being near the idea. That is why it matters so much to be honest with yourself about what you are actually feeling and what pressure is quietly doing to you. And yes, some of these girls got a lot of attention. They appeared on daytime talk shows. How many were suffering genuinely and how many were swept along by the spectacle, we will never really know, because nobody ever raises their hand and admits it was the attention. Either way, they got to move on, even if the grocery store whispers followed them for years. Because gossip, that old companion of ours, never really lets anything go. Thanks for watching.